Well, if you got nothing, then we can go to a game that has everything. The AFC Championship, and we will be having a Texans retrospective post-coaching carousel discussion in this video. But right now, we got to start with, before we do any of that, this game, it's Mahomes, it's Josh Allen. It almost speaks for itself at this point. It's probably the greatest quarterback rivalry since Manning versus Brady. Can we agree on that? Wow. I mean, this is the game that we've all been waiting for. I hate to say it because this Chiefs team has not exactly been likable in the way that they've got here, but the Bills Mafia has been waiting for their chance to get back at the Chiefs, and there's something great about this game being at Arrowhead too, in my opinion. I think if you got to beat the Chiefs, if you've got to unseat the Chiefs and slay that dragon like the Bills are going to try to do this Sunday, you got to do it at Arrowhead. You got to do it in their house. And I think that's exactly what Josh Allen and this Bills team does. I had Sean McDermott on the warm seat to begin this season, and I think he has established himself as the coach of the future in Buffalo, tied at the hip with Josh Allen, the way he's been able to, with newer players too. I mean, we're talking about guys on offense and defense. This is a team that has grown behind Josh Allen, and they've done it with, missing a guy like Stephon Diggs. He didn't need him this year. This feels like Josh Allen's time to really put the exclamation point on this season, what maybe should have been an MVP season, and beat Pat Mahomes once and for all. Who has a problem with that?
I do.
I'll let Christian go. I'm biased. Like I want the Chiefs to lose so badly. So Christian, you can give your case and then I'll follow.
Well, yeah, I have the Chiefs winning, and I just think this is the deepest Chiefs team that we've seen, at least on the weapons side of things. I think Buffalo, in kind of opposite fashion, is the weakest skill position team we've seen of that franchise to date. And I think it's really going to come back to bite them in this game with this much talent in the skill positions, both on offense and defense. I think Kansas City really has an extremely talented secondary. Justin Reed, I thought he died last week, knocking somebody out. And he came back in the game. I thought he blocked the field.
Isn't there supposed to be a guy who? Yeah,
it was Chenal, right? It was Chenal, but
yeah, but I mean,
isn't there supposed to be a guy who spots that too, like a concussion spotter?
He went to the locker room. But him and Trent McDuffie's one of the best corners in football, and I just really don't see anybody in the Buffalo receiving room to really take advantage or kind of be a separating factor. Now, the running offense is going to be a strength of Buffalo's, but I think you see it time and time again. It's not very difficult for the Chiefs to move that ball down the field. We didn't get a big DeAndre Hopkins game yet in this playoffs. I'm still waiting on that. I don't know the health of Teron Johnson right now. I know he was banged up last weekend. He's going to be extremely important for the Buffalo Bills. DeMar Hamlin's had an excellent season. That secondary is going to be really important. Epinesa and Greg Rousseau are going to really have to take advantage of the porous tackle play from the Chiefs for them to have a shot at success. I just think there's too much skill on the outside for the Chiefs. I think the skill is what makes the difference in this game. And really the experience, and the time and time again, they come up with these like significant wins. I don't think there's anything stopping them this week as well, unless we see some type of like explosive game from Curtis Samuel or Mac Hollins, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I largely agree with you from the skill position standpoint, Def, and I know Christian Benford, he has a concussion. He limited practice participant today. So you're talking about the back end of Buffalo's defense. I know Johnson got banged up. I didn't see him on the injury report, but maybe something to monitor. In either case, yeah, that's really important for Buffalo. I think getting Matt Milano back was huge for this team and this defense in general. You talk about their leader, their green dot guy. I think their defense turned a little bit of a corner when he came back. My heart wants Buffalo really badly. I do think that the skill position groups. The thing about the Chiefs is we saw it again last week against Texans. They just find a way to make these whenever they need a play, they make it. It's infuriating as a fan when you play against them because it seems like it defies logic. The fact that they've done this many times. I mean, you talk about a team that I feel like has played in a one possession game every single week. And all these one possession games seem to go the Chiefs' way. And am I supposed to sit here and expect that if this is a one possession game, it's going to go any differently? I don't know at this point, So I don't know. My heart wants Buffalo. I think the case for Buffalo is I feel like as a collective unit, if you look at the course of if you take the whole body of work, Buffalo has played better football than Kansas City this year, in my personal opinion. If you took the the snap from the start of the games to the snap at the end of the games, and you compiled all those together, I think Buffalo has played better. Buffalo's played better football over the course of the entire season, but that doesn't seem to matter too much for the Kansas City Chiefs because they just find a way to win football games, and it's tough, man. It's tough. I can't pick a side in this game. I want Buffalo. I think it's a true coin flip in my opinion. And we'll see if these receivers. I like Khalil Shakir a lot. You know who my X factor is in this game? It's Dalton Kincaid. I think Buffalo needs production from one of their two tight ends, Knox or Kincaid, because McDuffie I'm assuming is going to either shadow Shakir, or I don't think any of those other guys. Keon Coleman doesn't scare me. Matt Collins, Curtis Samuel. I mean, you talk about kind of a receiver that, as the sum of their parts, has done well this year. But you mentioned a Christian Casey secondary is going to take a lot of those guys out of the game, and you used a first round pick on Dalton Kincaid, and you need to see something from him this week, I think.
You talk about your X factors there. What became the X factor for me last week watching them was they played Tooney. You got it right. Yeah. They played him at left tackle and didn't play Juwan Taylor there, and that's who's going to be going up against AJ Epinesa and Greg Rousseau, and it just
and a sprinkling of Von Miller.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, he's gonna be facing.
Tell me that he won't be able to make a play in the playoffs.
Before you finish,
fumble recovery last week.
All I'm saying is I think that is a personnel move that definitely benefited them last week, and one that I think is going to benefit them a lot this week, especially just the personnel that they're going to be going up against. I would rather have Tooney go with Tooney over Juwan Taylor, where in the one spot on that offensive line where there has been a question every single time. And I think that's going to make a difference in it. I also think that they do have a little bit of voodoo magic going over on there with the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean,
is it voodoo magic if they've been called for less penalties in the last however many games of Pat Mahomes' career? Has it been like every game or some insane stat
dating back to the AFC Championship against the Browns? Yes, very much so.
You mentioned it, Mike, though, about the tackle situation with Kansas City. I thought the Texans pass rush had their absolute way against those guys last week. I mean, Will Anderson was an absolute wrecking ball.
Yeah.
Roll Tide last week. Danielle Hunter made a lot of those guys look silly. I mean, they've been doing that all year. I mean, they're talking about a pass rushing duo that's top 5 in the league, but I don't know if Buffalo's got horses like that. They've got an old Von Miller, and I like Rousseau and I like Epinesa, but none of those guys are touching Danielle Hunter or Will Anderson. But either way, I mean, it looks like Tooney is still trying to figure out his technique at left tackle. Like, obviously a very talented offensive lineman. The fact that he kicked out there, if he's played guard his whole career, is impressive in and of itself, that he hasn't completely imploded. But there were times last week watching the game where you could tell he still is kind of working on that left tackle technique. He doesn't have that entirely mastered. That's an edge that Buffalo could exploit, maybe. So long as the refs are calling holding penalties or false starts on Juwan Taylor. But in any case,
the over under is set at 47.5. So I mean, they're looking at you're looking at 24-23 is what they're projecting. I don't know. It's a they set the line pretty perfectly. I'm curious to see who will be the people. These two teams, obviously, with the two best quarterbacks in the league, it's been very difficult to even project who are going to be the playmakers every week in and out for. I think in the ground game for Buffalo, that will be an X factor. Is it going to be James Cook? What is going to happen there? And then for Kansas City, it's at least in the playoffs to this point, it's been Kelsey or bust. I mean, that was basically who carried them up and down the field the entire game. So I mean, I'm curious to see where the offense is going to be, but I think they're going to fall short. I think they're going to fall short. I really do think this might be Buffalo's year to be able to take it. And
I was going to say, I've been really impressed with Xavier Worthy, though, over the last month and a half or so. I think they finally figured out his role in the offense. It kind of seemed like he was going through some rookie struggles early. But
that was only a matter of time with his.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like he gets like 4 or 5 targets a game, and he gets touches, and I feel like he's settled in now to if I want to pick X factors on both sides of the ball when it comes to skill guys, like Kincaid's mine for Buffalo, and then Xavier Worthy's mine for Kansas City, especially if Christian Benford's out or Teron Johnson's banged up. If they're getting Xavier Worthy in space. I think he's definitely an added weapon for that team.
But has there been
he's gotten his fair share of targets over the last month and a half or so.
But has there been a better player on offense in these playoffs than Josh Allen? I don't think so.
Well, that's what I was going to talk about. I mean, when we think about the season that Pat Mahomes has had, it's realistically been the worst season of his career, statistically, correct? I mean, we can grant that since he's been the starter in Kansas City. And Josh Allen has had a season for the ages, a season where if Lamar Jackson didn't put up the numbers that Lamar Jackson was able to put up in the regular season, we would very likely be talking about Josh Allen as the reigning MVP or the presumptive MVP. And Josh Allen, despite never being able to win against the Chiefs, he has always produced against the Chiefs. He doesn't turn the ball. I think he has 1 interception in these playoff matchups against the Chiefs throughout his career. I think he has 10 touchdowns. I mean, that ratio is insane. He has done what he has to do in those games, and I don't think that Pat Mahomes, if there were a year where he were vulnerable, and if there were a game where the refs were – this is going to be probably the most watched game in football history. I mean, I think that if we're being honest, once we see this AFC Championship, it's going to be one of the most watched games. The refs cannot keep giving Pat Mahomes some of these calls, and I don't know if he's going to even try it. I think he's worried that if he keeps playing these games with the fake sliding, the going almost running out of bounds and coming back in, he could get himself hurt, but I don't know if he's going to be able to keep getting these calls with how publicized this game's going to be.
He's been getting.
I don't think you could put it all on the calls, man. I mean, they're just a great executing football team. They execute. That's what they do.
The Bills do too.
In fact, I don't think you can factor in the refs into the handicap, but there is something to be said. I mean, we can talk about it when I get to like the Texans. Like, because the Texans, with or without the refs, Texans should have lost the game for sure. They should have lost the game because they got out executed in the fourth quarter. They did. Did the refs play a factor early on in the game? Absolutely, but I don't think they're the reason the Texans lost. Well, I'll make that clear. I'll get to the reasons why they lost, but were the refs a factor in the game? Absolutely, they were. But I don't think you can factor that into a handicap when you're trying to predict like the winner of this football game. You just can't. You just don't know. You don't know what's going to happen with the refs.
Well,
game to game.
and if we can give the Buffalo defense some credit, I mean they were fantastic when it came to the red zone, going up against the Ravens in that game. You know, it just.
They should have lost though.
But that's what made that is what helped them was red zone defense, and
Mark Andrews should have caught the touchdown,
and he dropped it, and he dropped it, Christian.
And he
It happens in football all the time, though. Like team, if you want to make a deep run in the playoffs,
they bottled up Derrick Henry in the red zone, though. Like I mean, forcing them to go outside. I'm just trying to give them some flowers against what I think was an offense that everyone figured was going to make it an absolute shootout. And I mean, they showed up in the red zone in short fields against that offense. And you're telling me they can't do that against Kansas?
I think the Ravens beat themselves last week. I really do.
Well, the Browns beat themselves when they played the Chiefs. So it can happen.
How long ago is that? 7 years ago? 8 years ago?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
In any case, yeah, I mean,
Spags is a Hall of Fame coach, man. You're gonna see him dial it up.
I like Spags, man. I like Spags. He's up there with the Vangios of the world when it comes to DCs. You know.
No, if there were two DCs that could make the Hall of Fame just on account of being assistant coaches, it's probably Spags and Vic Fangio.
I'm very curious to see if Rapp and Benford are going to be able to go for Buffalo. I think that's going to be something that we do got to kind of watch out for on the defensive side of the ball, because you're going to want everyone. Yeah, I mean, you want all your dogs that are going to be able to go against an offense like this. So I don't know. Christian believes in the voodoo magic. I don't. I'm not a communist.
The stats in one-score games there's something to the execution of the Chiefs, and I'll touch on it when we get to the Texans at some point. But their execution when the plays matter most, it just doesn't seem to fail. But Buffalo can execute too. Like this isn't the Sirianni Eagles that we're talking about, you know, where it feels like they might not execute when it matters most. Like these two teams, I think, can both execute at a high level. That's why I think the winner of this game is going to win the Super Bowl, no matter who
by a
moves
mile.
on from the
by
NFC.
a mile.
Yeah,
Dominate.
No, and it's what goes in. I mean, it's going to be maybe the biggest game.
It's going to be cinema. It's going to be absolute cinema.
It's going to be awesome. I still have faith in, as I've said multiple times on this podcast, my prediction from the beginning, Eagles versus Bills, and I still do have faith in this Bills squad. Turtle dips out on us.
Turtle dips out. One name I think we got to watch in this game, in terms of what's going to happen afterwards. And we'll touch on with the coach openings, but I think Joe Brady, especially for a place like the Jaguars, I think that could be a name that's very well in the mix this coming coaching cycle.
I like that. Do we want to go into transition, or do we have any more thoughts on this AFC Championship?
Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes are better than Tom and Peyton. Can we agree?
Oh yeah, I think they're the game has evolved. It also depends on what you consider better. I mean, is there a better mind of a quarterback than? Are they more advanced mentally than Tom Brady and Peyton Manning in the primes of their career? Probably not. I think they both still have experience to gain. I mean, they're still relatively young quarterbacks, especially the way quarterbacks have played. When you consider Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. So if we're talking about talent in their prime and athletic ability and just being able to do ridiculous things that other quarterbacks can't do, yes, they're absolutely more talented. I think it's more of a question at that point, though, of them or Aaron Rodgers. How would you rank them in their prime?
Them.
over Aaron Rodgers in his prime?
Yes.
At his best?
So Josh Allen and Mahomes at their best is better than Aaron Rodgers at his best.
In my eyes.
That's what's being
yeah.
said.
Wow.
All right.
I don't entirely disagree. When you said better, I was thinking from like a entertainment or like watchable product, I guess. Not saying that Peyton Manning and Tom Brady weren't fun to watch, but for some reason, maybe it's because I'm older now, but I think both of their like unpredictabilities when it comes like play to play, like when they do like wizard stuff, I have no other way to put it. I find that to be way more fun to watch than like because Brady and Manning are both statues. I mean, that's
Right.
different kind of play styles.
different kind of play styles, and maybe this is the young head in me, and I'm sure the boomers might disagree, but it's just I find Mahomes and Josh Allen scrambling and throwing across their body 50 yards to somebody who's somehow wide open. I just find that to be absolute. It's cinema.
And then
it's
shout
beautiful.
out to guys like Seneca Wallace for paving the way for that kind of play style. You know. I'm kidding.
Our resident Browns fans gotta bring up the most elite quarterback in Browns history, Seneca Wallace.
One of